So now, how do I apply personalized learning to the classroom, and what do I need to do to make sure that it's effective? The first thing you need to do is consider a couple things. One, identify your learner's readiness level. So, where are they at on executive function? Where are they at with learner agency, asset based disposition, growth mastery mindset, right? So, where are we with all these? Are we at a beginner level? Are we at an intermediate level? Or are we at like an advanced mastery level where they have total control over those? So, that's what you have to figure out first before you can even really start. And then next is identify your broad curriculum topics that you need to cover. So, just as an example, when I'm talking about elements of music, here tend to be the ones that I do: rhythm, harmony, melody, form, texture, and expression. These are the buckets that I want to focus on. I don't want to go too much further in than that. Otherwise, I start to limit and take away the personalization. So, for rhythm, it may not necessarily be drums. It could be that they're wanting to write a film score, in which case, yeah, it's percussion, but the way you approach that's different than you would approach a rock song. So you want to make sure that they're broad topics that you want to cover, and then you can kind of personalize the details for each individual. So that's where you get started. So then starting with open projects. What I define as an open project is a really structured assignment where the expectations provide enough details so the students know what you're assessing for mastery relative to the broad topic, but no more detail than that. So again, if we go back to the drum example, I'm not saying drums is my focus. It's rhythm. I want them to have some kind of rhythmic element to their music. So that would be different for a film score versus a hip hop tune versus a rock tune versus a pop tune. So it's going to be different. So I want to leave it broad enough that they can explore what they want to, but structured enough that they know this is what I'm trying to focus on for you. Open projects are split into multiple due dates so that I can frequently check progress. So it may be that this week we're working on rhythm, and by Tuesday you need to have the kick drum in or whatever your driving element is, and then by Thursday you need to have another thing, whatever that is, but to be able to check in frequently. A lot of these are just I walk around and just check, make sure everything looks good, check and say, hey, is this all making sense? And then going from there. It's asking the students, what were you going for? So when I listen to their projects and I sit down to assess the final version, this will either be the first thing I ask or the first thing I ask after I listen to it. What were you going for? And it just kind of depends on when I look at it, if I can kind of tell what they're going for, because this helps me give better feedback based on what they're trying to do. If they're trying to write a hip hop tune, what I'm going to talk about and focus on is going to be different than if they're trying to write a rock tune, right? Because the different elements kind of work in a different way. You want to make sure that the project allows for there to be broad outcomes. We don't want a homogeneous product. We don't want everybody's product to look exactly the same, not even close to the same. If they're all the same, it means that your assignment details are either too restrictive or you just happen to have everybody in the class that thinks the exact same way and listens to the exact same kind of music. So avoid setting it up so that it forces them into a box. Leave it open. And this is the kind of project that's ideal for developing personalized learners. So this is like with my beginning class, this is what they do. There's a very specific structure to the class. We move at a certain pace, but all of the projects are open enough that they can kind of explore and have a little bit of freedom. So there's structure, but there's not. So there's freedom, but there's me prescribing what they do while we're developing all of our skills, learner agency, executive function, all that. So the next kind of project is 20% time. And this means that in class, they have 80% of structured time. So working on whatever the group is working on. And they have 20% time to work on whatever they would like to work on related to class, obviously. This is typically attributed to Google as 20% time, but it actually started back in the 1950s with 3M. And from their 15% project time came out Post-its and masking tape. So they basically told their people, hey, come up with new products that we could sell. And Post-it notes and masking tape came out of that. For Google in the 2000s, kind of where it made its resurgence as 20% time or 20% project. We have Gmail, AdSense, Google News, and a bunch of different things that come from that. So that's, again, Google saying, hey, we want you to spend 20% of your time working on some personal project that you're passionate about that potentially could be a product for us to sell in the future. And that's kind of the premise of it. So what this looks like is the learner selects a topic, something that they want to explore on their own, something that they want to do on their own that relates to the class. This could be they want to write a song, they want to write a podcast, they want to do sound design, they want to do Foley art, whatever that may be. It doesn't matter. They're picking something that interests them. The educator provides structured expectations. So this isn't prescriptive expectations, it's structured expectations, as in you need to have a project, a final product. It needs to be created in our DAW. It needs to potentially cover a certain set of topics if you wanted to limit that. Generally, you want to leave it open, though. And it's due at this time. So there's kind of broad instructions for it, just so that everybody is on the same page and everybody's working towards the common goal. As the educator, you want to go around and show support for the students as they're working and show interest in what they're doing. So this is as simple as like, hey, what you got there? Can I listen to it for a second? Yeah, that's awesome. And then giving feedback to it. So it's showing interest and support. You are also evaluating the process while you're doing that. So it's going around saying, hey, you're kind of wasting a lot of time here because you keep writing something and deleting it. Let's talk about maybe why you're doing that. You're focusing on the process. This is the chance for them to learn whatever they want while you help develop their skills of learning to learn, right? So how to learn is what you're developing. So what's getting you stuck? How can I help you? Is there anything I can do to help you out? Or have you tried looking up this? Have you tried using this tool? Different things like that, evaluating their process. And this is ideal for intermediate personalized learners. So year 2, this tends to be what I do with my students. It'll be Monday through Thursday, they'll have something that they have to work on for me. And then Friday will be a day where it's 20% time. They spend the whole class period working on whatever their personal project is. It's tend to be what we call it, just your personal project. So again, it's helping open up a little bit while we're still progressing as a group together structured. And last but not least, the full-fledged application of personalized learning, in at least my classes, is we have a capstone project. This is with my 3rd and 4th year students, where we start by co-planning. So I meet individually with every student. We sit down for like 10, 15 minutes during the first couple weeks of the year, and we talk about what are their interests? What are they planning on doing after high school? What is their potential career options? And we talk about how can we align those to the curriculum. I let them drive that conversation of here are the things I'm really interested in doing. So in the past, I've had students interested in going into law. I've had students interested in writing music. I've had students interested in film. We talk about how we can relate our class and take advantage of this year in the classroom to help them both learn our standards, but also become better at whatever they want to do as a career. So we start there. Next, they begin researching. So they work independently to research. This could be YouTube. It could be research articles on things like Google Scholar. It could be just like general articles on blogs, whatever that may be. So they're working independently to research and develop their skills for their project. Often this will be through recommendations from me. So like when we start the year, I'll say, what are 5 things that you need to know about your topic in order to be successful? And they'll have to list out 5 questions, and I'll say, there's your starting point. So you start there, research your first question. Anytime you ask a question in your head while you're learning on your own, write that question down, and that's where you're going to go next. So we want to encourage them to go down the rabbit hole a little bit and explore until they know everything they need to know. When they get to a point where they're like, I don't think I need to learn that to succeed at what my project is, then they pause and they jump on to the next question. But the idea is that they're working independently to research, and I'm there to help as kind of like the research assistant or as their research advisor to say, hey, here's what you need to maybe do next, or have you tried this source, or let me go look up that for a second and maybe see if I can find you some sources if they're getting stuck. So they plan, then they research, and then throughout the year, they follow up with me. So they will meet with me and they will explain what all they've learned. So actually, they're really teaching me in that moment. So it could be that they've learned about electronics and here's how to read an electrical diagram. So they'll talk me through the electrical diagram and say, here's what I know. And then I ask them for what don't you know, or maybe what are you confused by, or what are you getting stuck with? And that could be related to the content, or it could be the process. Often when we get past the first month, they start to get stuck in the process and they're like, I'm getting stuck because they've never done a project like this and they've never had this much freedom before. So we talk through like, well, maybe what's going on? Are you running into writer's block if they're trying to write something? Are you getting stuck trying to find sources? Or are you kind of finding the same information everywhere you look? So we talk through that and they tell me what they need help with, and then I help them with that. It could be helping find them more sources. It could be helping talk through being efficient with your time. It could be talking through setting better goals, whatever that may be, and then guide them to the next. And so this kind of becomes a cyclical process, this research, follow up, and then when we talk about implement, it kind of becomes a cycle there. Next, after they've been researching, they start to implement everything they've learned. So they synthesize all their knowledge from their research and from me to start creating their final product. That could be a song, podcast, whatever it is. So they're implementing that. And then they summarize everything together. I have my students both do self-reflection blog posts. So they do those every 2 weeks. They have to reflect on everything they've learned. And that, again, is about content, but also what they've learned about themselves and how they learn through the process. And they're working on their final product. And eventually they present. So they present at 9 weeks and they present at the end of the semester, kind of just a checkpoint of like how the project's going. And we do a big presentation at the end of the year where they present everything they've been working on. So that's what the capstone project looks like for me. We do other stuff in the midst of class, like we'll take a week and talk about a particular topic. Like this week, we're going to talk about doing remixing. But in general, they're working on their project most of the time, and they actually work pretty intently on it because it's something that they're invested in. That's the whole point of the personalized learning, is getting them invested. So just to finish up, just a couple example projects that I've had in the past to kind of pique your interest and see kind of what this looks like. So I had a student interested in being like a tour manager. So they were researching tour operations and concert venues. And they completed a tour schedule and a budget for a fictional East Coast punk rock band. So that was their project. We talked about careers. We were able to talk about the different electronics that they would need to purchase and rent. So that's kind of how we got down that rabbit hole. I had another couple students that were interested in hip hop and rap music, so they wanted to learn the history of it. So they both created a concept album where they mimicked the styles of each era. So they tried to limit themselves to only the tools people were allowed at that point in time. So kind of a cool example of that. I had a student that is interested in music performance. So they started composing and arranging, and they created 2 arrangements, a song for a brass quintet and a song for a jazz ensemble. I had a student that was interested in film. They wanted to learn more about film scoring and sound effects, so they completed the sound design package for a 10-minute short film. So these are just examples, but it shows you kind of the broad scale that we can apply with our class and still fit our standards while giving the students what they want to make the most out of their time in our classroom. So that will wrap up our webinar on personalized learning. I hope it's something that you will be able to implement in your classroom as we've talked through what it is, what all you need to be able to implement it, and how to apply it. And if nothing else, try it with just some of your students and just see what happens, and then you can expand out from there. Thank you again for joining us for our webinar this month, and we'll see you again next month.